Hi class, welcome back. And in this discussion I want to talk about saving in the simple spending model. And this wraps up my discussion about the relationship between spending and income. Alright, here's what I want to talk about. The first thing I'm going to bring up is what we mean by total private and government saving. And notice that sometimes government saving is referred to as public saving. Following that, I'll have a discussion about what determines the level of private, government, and total saving. And then there will be a discussion about saving at the point of spending balance. And again, what I'm going to show you is that in the income expenditure model, just like the loanable funds model, saving is going to be shown to be equal to investment plus net exports. And finally, there'll be I'll present a numerical example to illustrate the concepts that I talked about. Also, you should understand that a significant part of the discussion it overlaps what we already know. In other words, we've talked about saving already in the material related to measuring GDP, and we also talked about saving in the material related to the loanable funds model. All right, let's talk about saving. There are two types of saving: private saving and government saving. And if you add the two together, you have total saving. Now let's talk about private saving. Private saving, as we already know, is the difference between disposable income and consumption. And what I want to now show you is that there are different ways that you can write this. In other words, we can express disposable income as y minus t, or in which case then we can say that private saving is income less taxes less consumption. Now here's something new. Let's apply what we learned about the consumption function. And again, notice that private saving is disposable income less consumption. But also remember, we can express consumption. In other words, consumption can be represented by the consumption function. In other words, consumption is equal to autonomous consumption plus the product of the marginal propensity to consume and disposable income. So let's substitute this term into C and see what the private saving relationship now looks like. So here we are. We'll start with private saving equal to disposable income less consumption. And now let's substitute the right-hand side of this equation, in other words, C naught plus C1 y minus t into C. All right. Here it goes. Basically, so what we have is disposable income less consumption. In other words, disposable income minus autonomous consumption plus the product of the marginal propensity to consume time and disposable income. All right, let's pass the minus sign through the brackets. And so we get private saving is disposable income less autonomous consumption less the product of the marginal propensity to consume and disposable income. Now let's rearrange it. In other words, let's put this minus autonomous consumption at the front of the equation. And so we have private saving is equal to negative autonomous consumption plus disposable income minus the product of the marginal propensity to consume and disposable income. Now let's factor out disposable income from these last two terms, and we get what? Private saving is equal to minus autonomous consumption plus 1 minus the marginal propensity to consume times disposable income. Now this term 1 minus the marginal propensity to consume is sometimes referred to as the marginal propensity to save. So private saving is equal to negative autonomous consumption plus the marginal propensity to consume times disposable income. All right, now, so let's recap. Private saving, again, is equal to disposable income less consumption. Now let's see what which can be expressed as, and from the previous slide we know that this relationship can be re-expressed as private saving is equal to minus the autonomous consumption plus the product of the marginal propensity to save, that is 1 minus C1, and disposable income. Now let's see how, if each of these factors change, what will happen to private saving. All right. So the first thing is autonomous consumption. If autonomous consumption goes up, private saving goes down, and also the reverse. If something should cause autonomous consumption to fall, private saving will go up. So an improvement in consumer confidence would cause private saving to go down, and a worsening of consumer confidence will cause private saving to go up. The marginal propensity to consume. Obviously, if the marginal propensity to consume goes up, that means for any given dollar of income, people will spend more and therefore save less. Likewise, if the marginal propensity to consume falls, then people will be consuming less and saving more for every additional dollar of income. Also, income. You'll notice when we talked about the loanable funds model, we basically tried to assume income away, but here we're going to be right out front about the effect that income has on saving. The idea is that if people's income increases, then we would expect to see an increase in saving. That is, people will have more money to save, will have a higher level of income from which to save from. And finally, taxes. If taxes go up, private savings is going to fall, and vice versa. So let me ask you a question. If households' net worth declines, what do you think will happen to private saving? Will people save more or will they save less? Well, here's a hint. What happens to autonomous consumption? Well, we know from the previous discussion when that if people's net wealth or if people's worth or wealth increase, autonomous consumption will go up. So if people's wealth falls, let's say like what happened around 2007, 2008 with the housing crisis, people's net worth fell. And if people's net worth fell, this means what? That saving will increase. Now let's talk about government saving. Government saving is the difference between net taxes and government purchases. All right, we've seen this before. So, here's something you may not be too familiar with, even though it might have been mentioned a few times. This is to say when government saving is negative, the government is running a budget deficit, and when government saving is positive, there is a budget surplus. Now let's talk about total saving. So total saving is the sum of private saving and government saving. Also recall that private saving is what? That's GDP less consumption less net taxes. Government saving is net taxes less government purchases of goods and services. So total saving is equal to private saving plus government saving. Now let's make the substitutions for private and government saving. Here's a substitution for private saving, and here's a substitution for government saving. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is what I've done previously in class. Let's combine the two, and what we get is y minus c minus g. In other words, GDP less consumption less government purchases. In other words, the t's cancel each other out. So now let's talk about the determination of total saving. If income goes up, we would expect private saving to go up. It shouldn't have an effect on government saving, and therefore it's going to cause total saving to go up. Actually, in a more sophisticated model, would probably cause government saving to also rise if we were being a little bit more specific about the nature of how the taxation actually occurred. For all intent and purposes, it's not going to have an effect on taxes. Likewise, if consumption goes up, private saving will fall. The effect on government saving will be nil, and therefore total saving will fall. Taxes. If taxes go up, again, it's going to cause private saving to go down and government saving to go up, so the upshot, it's going to be a wash. And government purchases. If government purchases go up, it's not going to have an effect on private saving, but it will cause government saving to go down, and therefore will also cause total saving to fall. What I now want to talk about is saving at the point of spending bounce. So let's recall the following. Total saving is equal to what? GDP less consumption less government purchases. And at the point of spending bounce, what do we know? Y is equal to consumption plus investment plus government purchases plus net exports. And again, to get this, to get total saving, let's just subtract consumption and government purchases from both sides of the equation. So let's first subtract consumption. Let's now subtract government purchases. And what do we have? We have saving, which is equal to what? Y minus C minus G is equal to investment plus net exports. So even in this model, this relationship between saving and investment and net exports still holds. So again, the important point is that at the point of spending bounce, saving saving will be equal to investment plus net exports. Let's pause and compare what we're learning here with what we learned in the loanable funds model. And like the loanable funds model, in equilibrium, saving equals investment plus net exports. However, the big difference between the model that we're learning here and the loanable funds model is that in this model focuses on changes in income and not so much the real rate of interest when modeling how savings, investment, and net exports adjust. In other words, basically in this model, we're going to learn that if investment increases or if net exports change, the way by which savings will adjust is not so much through a change in real rate of interest, but rather through a change in income. And let's work on an example to see that. So recall from the earlier example in the previous presentation that we can express the consumption function as equal to 100 plus 0.6 times disposable income. And again, remember 100 is autonomous consumption, 0.6 is the marginal propensity to consume. Also recall that investment was equal to 20 initially, and government purchases equaled 50, taxes is equal to 50, and net exports equal 10. And also recall that we found that at the point of spending balance, income was equal to 375, and the value of consumption that prevailed when the economy was at the point of spending balance was equal to 295. Okay, so in this example, what's private saving going to be equal to? That's y minus c minus t, which is what? 375 GDP, 295 was consumption, less 50 was taxes, and so private saving was equal to 30. What was government saving equal to? Well, taxes, net taxes equaled 50, government purchases equaled 50, so government saving was equal to 0. In other words, the government budget was in balance. What was total saving equal to? Well, total saving is simply private saving plus government saving, so that's 30 plus 0, which is equal to 30. And notice that total saving, which is equal to 30, is also equal to investment plus net exports, which is equal to 20 plus 10, which again is 30. So again, at the point of spending balance, total saving is equal to investment plus net exports. Also, recall in the second part of the problem that was discussed in I guess it was the 5th lecture, investment increased from 20 to 70. In other words, investment increased by 50. The question is, how much will saving increase by? What do we know? We know that government saving is equal to 0, and government purchases and taxes are not changing in this example. So the only thing that can change is private saving. So we know, and the change in saving has to equal to the change in investment plus net exports. And net exports aren't changing, so the change in private saving is going to be equal to this change in investment, which is equal to 50. So we know that private saving is going to increase by 50. So private saving is going to go up from what? Beforehand it was 30, and if it's going to increase to 50, by 50 that means it's going to increase from 30 to 80. Let's see if that's the case. So in this case, what do we know? We know that income, recall that income when we discussed what happened when investment grew by 50, income at the point of spending balance went from what? 375 to 500, and consumption increased to 370. Okay, so in this case then, SG is still 0, and private saving, which is equal to y minus c minus t, is equal to what? 500 minus 370 minus 50, which is equal to 80. And again, because SG is equal to 0, total saving is equal to 80. This is what investment and net exports are now equal to once investment increased by 50. How did private saving increase from 30 to 80? How did it grow why did it grow from 30 to 80? Well, that's because of the increase in income. As investment, recall that the increase in investment caused income to increase, and as income increased, people were able to save more, and that's how it was possible for private saving to go from 30 to 80. In other words, how it was possible for private saving to increase by 50. Okay. In other words, so again, this gets back to the point I made about a few slides back. that in the income expenditure model, the focus is on adjustment, on income adjustment to bring about the equilibrium between saving and investment in net exports. Anyways, this wraps up my discussion for Lecture 7.